Okay, I'm Tawndee Dillard, and we went on the Mexico mission trip to Ensenada, Mexico. And part of the reason I wanted to go was I grew up in a church that did missions every year, and once you were in youth group, that was an opportunity every summer. And since that time, I have done some mission work in college and then with some of our previous churches, but it's been a while since I had the opportunity, and so I was excited to do that. And then I was really excited because I got to introduce that to my own children. Josie got to go with us on the trip, and she, the moment that it was introduced, said, "I've always wanted to do one," which made my mama heart happy. And so it was good to go and serve and kind of hand down, this is what mission work looks like, and getting to be the hands and feet of Jesus wherever you're at. Preparing to go to Mexico, I think because of having previous years of doing missions, I always know that if it's something God has led us to do, he's always going to provide the way. And so he sent out support letters, and kind of like Jenny had said in hers, it's always amazing to see who supports you. And it's not always who you expect it's going to be, and sometimes there's random people that come along and are on the journey in prayer and financially. Going into the week, I think we weren't really sure what to expect. A lot of us in the van, the whole border was, I think, a lot of our concerns of what's it going to be like, and it was really easy. And so that was one of the things that surprised a lot of us. Getting into Mexico was no problem at all. They stopped, they opened up the back van doors, looked for a very brief second, closed the doors and said, "You're on your way." Got into Mexico, and as soon as you cross the border, you see a drastic change of just what the landscape looks like. You see the poverty going into Mexico. Coupled by, you see this beautiful Pacific Ocean along the road the whole way going into Ensenada. And so for me, a lot of it was just kind of taking in, like, what's here. I knew we were going into poverty, but I didn't know exactly what that would look like and how does that look like compared to cities here in the U.S. I've done missions in Jamaica and seeing how's it look similar there. But very quickly you see homeless people built up underneath roads or just alongside of the road within Mexico. And then just as we traveled, it's a beautiful country. Their mountains look very different than what ours do. It's kind of a dry mountain with bushes all over it. Yet it was beautiful, and you see the ocean opposite of it, and then you just see houses all built up on the countryside, and then you'd see more mountains and more houses. And then as we came into Ensenada, it was a much bigger city than I anticipated it to be. And we got there, and quickly, once you are off the main road, you know you're in a different country. There's a lot of dirt roads with a lot of potholes, and a lot of dirt is flying the whole time. Climate was beautiful. And so we got there, and we got to Yugo Ministries, were welcomed in and kind of just said, you know, here we are. We started into chapel the first night, and we were introduced to the whole mission of the week, which was Mission 646. And I assumed initially it's just a Bible reference, and came to find out it's a whole much bigger idea of this is the area code for Ensenada. And so the mission is to go and reach the area of Ensenada in 646. And probably one of the takeaways that came later in the week was one of the guys that spoke at chapel later said, okay, you've accomplished, well, so it probably was Thursday night, you've accomplished Mission 646. You've built the houses. Now your job is to take it back to your area code. And so your mission for us would be, what is your mission in 478? And I think that's something a lot of us are wrapping our heads around of, like, okay, we went and did this for a week. What do we do now that we're back? And I challenge that to our youth especially. I think that might be a little bit more of a challenge. For me, some of it's even just been saying, okay, you're a teacher. What's it look like to be the mission field as a teacher, and to love the kids that get to come into my classroom? But I like that Yugo set up that idea behind it of, it's not just about this week that you come and serve, but you're to come home and do more with that and keep serving and being Jesus' hands and feet wherever you are. And I really appreciated that, just knowing in all my previous years of missions experience, a lot of times it is you go for a week and it's this huge spiritual high and you're excited and you come back and it's just done. And so that was one of the things I like, that they gave us a takeaway and a challenge to come back and still continue to serve where we're at.
Awesome.
So for a lot of our team, I think especially us adults and even some of the youth, we said one of the biggest takeaways from the week was it built community within our own church group that went. There was a lot of us, I probably knew all the faces for the most part of everybody went, but I didn't know them personally. And so it was a week that allowed us truly to work alongside of one another, but build relationships. And it wasn't just, hey, here's my best friend that I'm getting to serve with, but it was also, hey, here's some youth that I know their faces, but that's all I know. And a lot of us adults were very much amazed at our youth. They worked hard, and they didn't complain. And that's something I said many times. Like, I was amazed by the end of the week, not a single teen had complained, not a single adult had complained all week. Even when our showers and our toilets went to half capacity and we also had to share them and we had to walk across campus to find a shower to use or a toilet to use, like, there was no complaining. And it was a time just to sit and have conversations at times and learn about each other and what we do and why we're doing what we're doing. And then to also encourage each other in meeting the families that we were working with and seeing different gifts of, you know, some of our youth doing construction, but then some of our youth playing with the kids and seeing their gifts in that way. And then even just as we were building relationships, learning how do you build a relationship with the family you're going to serve. There was a lot of language barriers. Google Translate is wonderful, but then it's also trying to type it and hoping it's translating it correctly for the family to read it, and then trying to figure out what they're trying to say back to you. But sweet family that we worked with, we were with Benito and Paulina, and then their son Dominique and their baby Nambani. And one of the things that I've taken away from the week is before we went, we got to see pictures of their family that Yugo Ministry sent saying, here's your family. This is a little bit about like where they work, their ages, their current house situation, which was wood wrapped in plastic. And the pictures that I saw when I got back made me think a little bit different of who we left, because the pictures that we had beforehand, they're very solemn faces. It's just life. They're wanting a home, but living in poverty. But the faces we left were faces full of joy because they finally had a home. And I think for them too, they worked a lot of that with us. So it wasn't just we came and did it and gave it to them. It was they worked alongside of us in building a dream that they have. And I think part of that too was getting to share Jesus' love just by being present with them. And being willing to let language be a barrier, but still not making that keep us away from them. I think one of the last night we were there, the guy that spoke at chapel talked about when he was 5 years old and at a vacation Bible school in the hills of Mexico somewhere. And I would assume he probably was maybe in his 30s, maybe early 40s now. And he said, I remember the Americans coming at 5 years old. And he's like, there was two things that stuck out to me. He's like, I didn't understand them, but there was two things that I always remember. One was their smell, and one was that they always smiled. And it was the love of Jesus I saw through their smile. The other one was their smell, and their smell was sunscreen, is what he later came to find, which was kind of funny to hear that part. But he's like, they always wear sunscreen because you're going to get burnt in Mexico, being in the sun and the heat. But it stuck out to me because I think at the end of the week, you're always wanting to know, did we leave anything behind with the family that has to do with the spiritual side? Like, did they meet Jesus and us being there? And I think his message of just saying, like, I remember their smiles and that Jesus loved me because of their smiles. And so that was something that just kind of comforted my heart of, like, we smiled. We loved them. We hugged them. We were together. And even though maybe few words were exchanged because of the language barrier, Jesus was still shared with them. In the week, one personal one for me was as we drove each day to the house where we were working. It was probably about a 40-minute drive there. But you're leaving the city part and you're driving out into the hills and the mountains. And it would always be one of those things when we turned off the main road, we headed into the mountains. And I would always look at them. And I think it was the second morning going in, I was just looking at the mountains, and I love nature, but was praying for the family. And God gave me the verses, Psalm 121, verses 1 and 2. And it says, I lift my eyes up to the mountains. Where does my help come from? My help comes from God, the maker of heaven and earth. And it was a prayer that God gave me for that family, that they would know Jesus in that way. We knew our family had a Catholic background, but had recently been going to a Christian church and was seeking a little bit more about that. And so one of my prayers for them was just to always know in their poverty situation in a country where there's not a lot, that God is their help. And so it was one of those ways that it made me keep trying to listen to God also throughout the week of, God, what do you want us to give to this family to say? And so later in the week, when we present the house to the family, they had us do a blessing circle. And so the whole team circles up with the family, and they have the key to the house. And so every person passes that key and says something to bless the family with before the family actually gets the key and gets to walk into the house seeing the final product. Because while they worked with us, they weren't with us the last day as we did all the final touches and beds were put in and bedding was put in and tables were put in. And so listening to our team share as each person passed the key of not only were we providing a blessing to the family, but the family had blessed us in ways of just allowing us to come in to what is their home, their old one and their new one. But they also let us love on them and let us love on their kids. And I think it was just neat to see how our youth were touched, because a lot of them have never seen that kind of poverty, and how God made them appreciate what they have, and recognize that even though language may be a barrier, there's still a way to go and serve and love the people there. And I know a lot of us had the opportunity to be parents and our children together serving, and that's what a lot of the parents said, like, just that opportunity for us to teach our kids, here's how you go and serve, I think was a big way. And then getting to hear our family share at the end of how they wanted so much to have a home but never thought it would be, and then to stand there and see that part of God providing that home for them and getting to go in and realize there's a place of safety now that has locked doors. They have beds, they have a table they can sit at, and those are things they didn't have before. I truly believe there was a different experience of Jesus' love for them out of that.